Hi. I want to make a video about the state and its obvious control of people. They've had this clap for the NHS thing now and then recently. I've noticed that it always seems to come from particular blocks of flats, or even estates, because where I live there are a number of small council estates. They each have like 4 or 5 blocks of flats in them, and they're like a block of the pavement. If you walk along the pavement, there are like 2 or 3 blocks of my flats in my estate here. Walk along the pavement again, so that each block has several blocks of flats in it, and each block is given a name, and the people in my estate don't seem to do any clapping. Not in my block. I'd have heard my neighbours, right next to me, if they'd clapped and banged their pots and pans and things. And the people behind me, at the other part of the estate, don't seem to make any noise during these clapping times. But whole other estates, so this whole estate doesn't clap. And other whole estates do seem to, because the noise seems to come from particular areas. So it's like the people in those particular areas have particular affiliations. Now you might think they're political, and that's strange enough, but I think they're just state affiliations. When the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviet Union fell, a few years later, people were saying that the same people were still in charge. And apparently they always are throughout the world. No matter what happens, the same people always get in charge. Like people who want to be rich always manage to get rich. But do you remember when the Soviet Union fell and capitalism began in Russia again? The people who were starting it, who were getting really rich, actually were killing each other off. The business rivals were actually killing each other to become the richest and the most powerful. They started a mafia, really, there, killing, not necessarily, I don't know how much they necessarily abused the public, like the Italian mafia apparently does in Italy and did in America, and maybe still does in America. But they did kill each other, and maybe some of their lieutenants or something, their bosses, underling bosses. But they certainly killed some of the bosses. The actual bosses definitely put hits out on each other and killed each other. So they're violent people. And lower down, we know the police are bad. In the UK, they've been raping children, some of them at least, along with the Muslim grooming gangs for decades. So everyone knows what the police are like now. And I'm wondering, really, if there's so much tight control over society that they do put their people in blocks of flats. I think they do, actually. And entire other blocks of flats and even estates are not sympathetic to them because we're their victims. We're the ones they mess around. That's why we're not out there clapping and banging our pots and pans at 8 p.m. when apparently they do these things. So at 8 p.m. tonight, apparently, there's going to be another such time. So I suggest everyone goes out and not necessarily walks along streets, which can be longer and less informative, but certainly goes to council estates like mine, where there are a lot of, we'll just have a look at all the different blocks of flats and just notice at 8 p.m. tonight, just notice, and any time they do it in the future, because they say they're going to do it ahead of time, apparently. So to make a fuss, so they know to make a fuss. And just go along to the council estates and see for yourself that they seem to be dividing people up into whole blocks of flats with different political affiliations or social investments. The slaves are in some blocks of flats, and they don't bang their pots and pans because they're too victimized and unhappy with things, and they don't feel inclined to be so supportive. But other entire blocks of flats, or even entire mini estates, or whole big estates, who knows, are supportive. And I think it's because they are either the NHS and police themselves, or they are related to them, family members, snitches, criminals, whoever's involved. The police sent me to prison. And while I was there, criminals openly told me that there are corrupt police, lots of them. They didn't say how many, but they said lots. Not a few, lots. And they know which ones they are, and they rarely get in any problems because they know who they are, and they know when they're on duty. They know when they can do whatever. I presume there's bribery going on, and bribery and corruption. But it's so state-controlled that I really do wonder if we're actually living in the equivalent of Terry Pratchett's, he's an author, comedy series of books about Ankh-Morpork, where crime was nationalised because it couldn't be got rid of, and it was found easier to control if it was nationalised. So they nationalised it. You know, some people say, for example, if you decriminalise drugs, you would have less crime because you wouldn't be criminalising drugs. The same goes for everything. You could decriminalise burglary. You can decriminalise all sorts of things and then have less crime because people won't be breaking laws because the laws won't be there to break anymore. Well, what about if that were an invisible arrangement that we just didn't know about? Do you know, for example, that when somebody steals an antique, they could have stolen it to order. Burglars could know what's in your home, and if you want something, they could literally go and get it anytime. This is apparently this is the kind of thing that has happened in the past, and there have been reports written on it, official reports that have found this. The people who are straight don't know about these things because they don't get told. They just write reports, and they only know what they find out in their investigations. But the truth could be very different, and it could be coming out right now. If you just go and see how much state control there is, or evil control there is, over things. Now, at 8 o'clock tonight, go out, or when they do these clapping things, go out and see that entire estates or blocks of flats will do this, and entire other ones won't. That's state control. They're deciding who goes where. They decide who can go in blocks of flats where you don't have affiliations with them, and who goes in blocks of flats that do. And some police will know this, or even all police know it. They therefore know what to do if they get an address from somebody who's local anyway, so they know the addresses, or they'll have them just written down on their database. Somebody who's got a particular address will automatically be found not guilty if something happens, if they commit a crime. And the other person will be found guilty. I was obviously always in the wrong address, or they had some bullshit tag on me that got me a criminal record again and again. It ruined my life. I think I might have just been unemployed, actually. Really, I think they just probably got me because I was unemployed. It might even have been policewomen who assaulted me, and then I got nicked for being unemployed. Like, you're going to pay your way somehow. Either you pay taxes or you pay our wages by being a prisoner. I'm serious. I really mean it. So anyway, go and see the state control. Go and see go and see this. And so they must be deciding. They must know who everyone is and what they're like. Well, they'll know whether or not you had an affiliation with them, for example. They'd know whether or not you had affiliation with them, whether you were part of the family, whether you were corrupt, whether you were working for the state, or whatever their criteria are to put you in various blocks or entire various estates or whatever, because the noise does seem to be coming from estates in a particular direction of where I live. It's not coming from behind me, and it's not coming from my left. It's coming from the front and from the right. Those are particular places. It's not coming from all around. And they have everybody identifying with a particular common psychology, so you can't tell people apart in terms of their behaviour. They all behave the same. I would have expected the people on my left and at the back, certainly on my left, to have had political affiliations with the state. They're aspiring types, or people you think had already got jobs or done okay in life, and yet it's the people in these other blocks who seem to be backing them up a lot. There seem to be possibly a few more immigrants in those blocks. So maybe they are the foreigners we're now being told we owe so much to, after we've given them everything and they've taken our jobs. We give them everything, they take our jobs, and then, and they get paid. And they're just workers like everyone else. Some people haven't even got a job. And yet we owe them. You know? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe in those blocks it's because there are more foreigners. But whatever, it's just really strange in some way that whole areas and blocks and estates are doing this and whole other areas are not. So there is some control going on somewhere. Everyone seems to be the same. We can't really tell each other apart socially. They've got us all acting identical. But for whatever reason, job aspirations, when they say this is standard behavior and everyone wants a job so they comply with it. Or something like that, brainwashing, social norms, that kind of thing. But anyway, if you think about the amount of control, people in decision-making positions in the council must have access to information that enables them to do this. And they must be placing people specifically according to their affiliations or their attachments, their contacts, whatever. Their jobs, their contacts, their family members, their position in the hierarchy, their position in a secret society, which may just be the council and the power structure, and so on, that kind of thing. So basically what you end up with around the world is bullies and corrupt and criminal types and control freaks and money grubbers and selfish types being in control of ordinary decent people and just abusing and exploiting the hell out of them any way they can forever. That's what you get. That's what seems to be happening around the world. That's why I actually admire these countries that have a lot of revolutions like Mexico and so on. At least when they have a problem and they've got a genuine reason to do it, they will revolt and stop people from mistreating them, which they have every right to do. But in the West, we pride ourselves, especially in England, on being so well behaved and civilized. We never revolt. We just take endless amounts of abuse, which I don't like. I'm wondering if I should move to one of these so-called fascist right-wing countries, like, I don't know, Italy anyway. I like Italy. Maybe I should have moved there when we were part of Europe. But anyway, because I think Italy is more inclined to possibly be the way I'd want to be. They don't have particular revolutions. But I mean, it's these Latin countries that tend to have revolutions. Spain had a revolution, didn't it? Yeah, maybe I should move to Spain. They might be more in touch with me psychically or something. Simpatico, as the Italians say, or something. More in sympathy, kind of thing. But yeah, there is enormous state control going on, and they've absolutely given it away now. Too stupid to realise that they did this massive control thing, which absolutely distinguishes them, and but secretly, which they now made public. I suppose they could try and get everybody to do this clapping thing, and then we wouldn't be able to tell ourselves apart from them anymore. Alternatively, they could stop doing the clapping thing and stop making it so obvious. But while they are still doing it, go ahead and get the proof. I'm going to try and get some tonight. I'm going to go out and film tonight at 8 o'clock and see what's going on. See, get some proof of it. It has happened before, but I don't watch TV anymore, and I'm on my own in the world, so I haven't heard of it before. This is going to be about the fourth time tonight, and it's the first time I've known what's going on. I finally saw it in the news, and not even the mainstream news. It was a comment somewhere, a comment on an article that finally made it clear to me that it was finally actually just said it was the NHS. Otherwise, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like the football season or something, because I don't follow that either. I just guessed it was football. Somebody had won a match or something, And yeah, so yeah, well, I thought Britain's Got Talent had a victor or something, you know. So I didn't really know what it was, but I finally saw somewhere that said, because it was so much noise, I kind of guessed it might be the clapping, but I thought, and more people would do the clapping, you know. It just seemed so strange anyway that it was particular blocks. I thought it was also a sort of a party, a private party. Maybe people had organised a block party or something, or an estate party, and they all had a few drinks and decided to cheer or something. You know, I couldn't quite figure it out. I didn't go and see what it was, and this is the first I've heard of it actually being the clapping for the NHS, and it is not entire blocks, and it is other entire blocks. So it's just so strange, and it shows enormous state control. So go out and see it while they've still got it going on. Enormous state control is going on, and you just try and see it while you can, you know. And if you're in ordinary houses, you won't see it so much. Well, you might see whole streets, but then they're private. You see, if they're bought it privately, then they can do what they like, and they might be mixed up more evenly, kind of thing. But again, if everything's going to these particular types, they might be the only ones who can buy privately. So everywhere there is private buyers, you might again see all this clapping going on. And where there are not private buyers, like renters, you wouldn't see it, but you wouldn't necessarily know, because in private housing, you can have private owners, as far as I'm aware, right next to renters. And renters wouldn't be the ones with so much sort of affiliation or investment in the state. So it might be harder to tell in such areas. It'd be interesting to film it as well and try and post it online and see if anyone can make sense of what's happening there as well. Because it might be more difficult to see there, because renters might be mixed up with private buyers and so on. But then they also have private buyers in council flats these days. So again, it's difficult to tell who exactly is doing this. But it is odd that it does seem to be entire blocks of flats that are doing it, and entire blocks that aren't. So there is an element of control somehow, because entire groups of people with particular affiliations are all housed in specific blocks. So someone is doing the segregating. And what's the reason for it as well? If there's a revolution, are the police going to protect particular places? Are those places armed? If you went there, would you find those people had arms and other people hadn't? I haven't. Are they making sure some people don't have arms and other people do? Are those the people with jobs? I bet they are the people with jobs. That's why they're so happy with things. That's why they're so supportive, because they're the state, and they're trying to make everybody else, the people who are not clapping in other blocks, feel intimidated or something. I'm not saying I want to pick on people for being nurses here. I know this clapping started because nurses got picked on. I'm not saying I want to pick on somebody for nursing me when I'm sick, right? I'm not a dumbo. I'm not stupid. You know, I'm clever enough to have figured something out here. All I'm saying is that there must, I presume there's a purpose behind it. And I can only imagine it's I don't know what it is actually. It's really strange. I can only imagine it's like fortresses, like for physical defensive purposes, so that if there ever were trouble, the police would know which blocks they wanted to protect and which blocks they would regard as the enemy. The enemy would be the people they put upon, the people they exploit, the people not doing the clapping, not supporting because they're slaves and criminals and other people they've mistreated and exploited and so on. And people they call criminals, you know. I don't call myself a criminal. I don't think of myself as a criminal. I think of them as criminals, as which many people do now. I've seen videos as well where nurses were made by nurses, which they put online, in which they said unsympathetic things about protesters, which they would maybe be treating in the next minute. The protesters were trying to enter a hospital to take shelter from police who were charging them with batons, and the nurses blocked the doors and said what scum and animals they were and things like that. Those nurses are the ones who would be treating any injured protesters just seconds later via another entrance. And they would be putting on an act of being nice and calling themselves heroes and saying you should bang your pots and pans for them and clap for them and things like that. And in fact, their attitude to protesters, I think it was Yellow Vests about a year ago, their attitude was just horrible, really horrible. Not at all caring, not at all sympathetic, not at all even understanding or respectful of democratic rights. They had no idea what had happened to those protesters. The protesters were running in fear, and the police were chasing them with batons. And we all know what the police are like. So if the nurses are supporting the police without thinking that the protesters might have been right, then what we basically have is state systems having really evil attitudes towards the ordinary person, or whole job sectors interbreeding, seeing themselves as sort of social equals and forming family groups and effectively state mafia. It probably happens all over the world, maybe always has, maybe always will. So it's just interesting to see, that's all. And this is why I think we need open government, certainly more open government, and maybe online open random number generation of people to put them in various flats so they can't be segregated. But that will just end up with the police criminalizing people as they wish to get them out of various flats, and till by chance they all end up in the way they want them, because they'll just keep removing people until by chance their own people end up where they want them and others don't. You could do that by chance just by continually removing people you don't want. Every time a red ball went into a particular hole, you just remove it until you got a blue. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So they would just, they always find a way. They've just got sneaky minds, that's all. Sneaky and corrupt minds. I don't know if they're all like that. Maybe they are. They may well be all like that. Maybe a lot of people know. Maybe I'm the only one who hasn't known. Maybe I'm... Sometimes, you see, I'm a targeted individual and I'm surrounded by people who are continually abusive to me. And my neighbours, I mean, wherever I go, I always get trouble. And it's not my fault. It's not because I'm paranoid or mad, and I'm not stupid or attention-seeking like the police say I am. They say I'm mad and attention-seeking, or they put me in, drag me off to mental hospital to be evaluated. They let me out in 3 months because they didn't feel able to keep me any longer, because it would have entailed a review which would have somehow proven something against them. I think the second review must be much more serious, and they're more afraid of being caught out lying in it. So there may be some straightness somewhere, but there's a lot of corruption in the system. Maybe they're all corrupt. The amount of abuse I get in my life has sometimes made me wonder if I'm the only person in the world who's not abusive, you know, and how that could be and why they'd pick on me for it. You know, I guess if I were the only good person, I would be the only one with any spiritual energy or something they could exploit. I don't know, something like that. I do believe in God. You're driven to think things like this anyway if you're treated the way I am. Because the treatment you receive is so evil, you can only in the end classify it as evil. I believe in God anyway. I've never really not believed in God. It may be true, like they say, that it's actually demons that do gang stalking. Demons in human form. Demons that have taken people over or something, you know. I don't know. Anyway, if you want proof of very strong state control, just go ahead and look at particularly at states at the times of the clapping. I'm going to go out and film tonight. As I recall before, definitely there were particular areas that clapped and whole areas that didn't. If that changes tonight, that will just be another weird thing, really. But I won't be able to prove that it was different before if it changes tonight. So that's another thing so that, you know, they could just tell everyone clap tonight. You know, you might think, why would they be paranoid about you? Who are you to be paranoid about? Well, obviously, if I'm going to get video film that proves something, then that would prove something. So, yeah, they would take note of that. So I'm not being paranoid, and I'm not having delusions of grandeur that anyone would worry about me unnecessarily, because if I'm going to get video proof, the worry would be necessary. So yeah, just go out tonight and try and, when they do this clapping, try and get proof of actual sections of people who might be doing this, and who just get proof everywhere and put it online. And maybe people, make sure you use the keywords, especially in the title, of NHS clapping strangeness. Okay, something like that makes it easy to find. And then you can try and make sense of it all. But in my area, I've already made sense that something strange is going on. And I think in the end, we would relate to the possibility of revolution. You might say, well, how could they have been paranoid? They must have been fixing this up for a long time. Yeah, but there's no point in not taking security measures if you can, if you're of that kind of mindset. If they want to do this, then presumably it would make sense to them to do it. You know, so whatever the reason, I don't really know what it is. It's just strange. Sometimes their flats are very quiet as well when I pass them. Sometimes there seems the noise like it's people are in them. Sometimes they are really quiet. And I really wonder if there's even anyone in there. Like maybe they're disappearing to another dimension or something. Maybe they are demons and they do go back to some other world or dimension. At sometimes. And it was coming from that sort of direction, really. The quietness. Well, kind of that direction. I haven't really heard it from that many. But this is my point. How can you describe not hearing something? You know, it's like they say you can't prove a negative. If somebody's quiet, it doesn't mean they're not there. You know? So strange. But it does make me wonder whether they want to disguise something like real silence at some time. It's just strange. It really is. Anyway, go out and film during these clappings. Go to the estates, perhaps, and see whole blocks clapping and whole blocks not clapping, and put it online as proof that the state exercises very strong control over the whole population for some reason, even if we don't know why. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.